Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Learn This with Mahesh. So it's almost been a week's time I did not post any videos. The reason was I was preparing myself for Professional Cloud Network Engineer certification and successfully I cleared it on last Sunday. Really happy on that and planning to do some videos on this Professional Cloud Network Engineer preparing ourselves. So I'll definitely do that. So that being said, coming to today's topic, the topic is towards understanding like the seven wonderful features in Google Cloud Platform. The name I wanted to relate it with the seven wonders of the world. So just wanted to relate with that. So let's look into this. The first feature which we wanted to look into this today is feature number one, which is primarily towards the serverless services offering in GCP. When it comes to other cloud, usually the serverless features which they provide are primarily like on compute and storage to an extent. That's it. But when it comes to Google, the product offering which you get is almost in almost all the categories. It could be your compute, storage, network, it could be database, data warehouse, messaging service, or it could be a data processing pipeline and machine learning. That's a very good option because the more the serverless, less would be your operation works. Like there are few organizations who are leveraging serverless features of GCP and they don't have any operations itself. So that's the biggest benefit which you get, and you will be focusing primarily on the business, not on the infrastructure. And to get the mapping of the exact products, these are the products which fall under thing. So when it comes to compute, you have App Engine Standard, very specific. It's App Engine Standard, Cloud Functions, and the recent one, Cloud Run. And when it comes to your storage, the most favorite product for everybody, Google Cloud Storage comes into picture. Database, so a NoSQL database, DocumentDB, which is your data store, data warehouse. Again, the most famous and popular data warehouse, which is our BigQuery. Coming to our messaging service, you have PubSub, which can handle almost like 1 million messages per second. And you have Apache Beam Pipeline, which can be executed on Dataflow as the execution engine. And if you want any AI capabilities, you can use Cloud ML Engine. Now it's recently called as AI platform. So that's the first feature. Moving on to the next feature, which is one of my favorite features after finishing the network certification, network engineer certification, which should be nothing but your VPC. So global VPC, that is the one which is very unique in GCP. So before we understand what is global VPC part, let's understand how the traditional VPCs work. So usually if it's a traditional VPC, if you have two data centers, one in US, one in Singapore, and if you want to connect these two machines to interact each other, the standard way is you need to create a tunnel, a VPN tunnel, a gateway setup, all those things. They cannot interact each other using internal IP address or RFC 1918 standard. The reason is their network is regional in nature. They are only specific, it's constrained only to that specific region. So that is the problem, and the same problem is there in other popular cloud vendors also. Let's just go into that and see. Now if we see AWS, so this is the official documentation from AWS, and if I see one of their architectures where they see where there's a virtual machine in region A and another virtual machine in region B, and if they want to connect each other, interact, simple ping, if they want to interact each other, you need to set up a VPN connection. So this is one of the biggest drawback. So if you have multiple virtual machines to connect, how many tunnels will you create? Multiple regions. So maintaining the tunnel and creating it is definitely a overhead. The same thing applies even to Microsoft Azure. So here again their website, where you see one in US East West and one in US East, and if they want to interact each other, you need to do this tunneling. But when it comes to Google, it's a altogether a different ball game here, and Google's powerful strength is their network, so which is one of the largest software defined network of its nature in the entire planet. And few statistics says that almost like 40% of the world's internet is on Google's backbone, which is their network. And if you see, whenever they create any regions, so they almost have 20 regions now, so this will definitely change going forward. But whenever they start laying, whenever they say, for example, if you just go to regions, there are a few upcoming regions. So the first part which they try to do in those regions is lay the cables. It could be terrestrial cables or it could be under the sea. So but that is the first thing which they do before a zone or a data center gets provisioned in that specific region. And because of that, it's global. They have their own optic fiber cables. Because of this, if you have something in Singapore and if you have a virtual machine in US, you can use their own optic fiber cable to communicate using internal IP address. That's the biggest benefit. No need of tunneling, no need of setting up a gateway. Everything works out of the box. So this is the part which I wanted to show. Say it's the same thing, one server in a virtual machine in US, a virtual machine in Singapore, and you don't need to set up any tunnel. You just provision it and you can able to ping these machines easily without doing any extra steps. So let's see this in action. So I have come to my compute engine. So let's create two servers, one in US, one in Singapore. So the first server is US server, and let's leave everything as default. Only thing is that the change which we need to do is change the region, select the actual region and click on create. All right, the US server is created. Let's do the same thing for the Singapore server. So I have entered all the details. Let's make it simple and click on create. All right, both the servers are provisioned. So what we can do next is simply SSH into those servers and try to ping the other machine. From US, let's try to ping Singapore. From Singapore, let's try to ping US machine. All right, we have SSH into both the machines. So now what I'm doing is on my left, I have Singapore. On my right, I have US. I have copied the US server internal IP address. External IP address is not at all our concern because that is something possible by every cloud. But uniqueness with GCP is doing with the internal IP address. So I have copied the internal IP address of US server US in Singapore, and similarly the Singapore's IP address I have copied here. So let's try to do the ping, and we have not set up anything. We have just provisioned our virtual machine. That's it. Let's see whether it will work or not. And boom, it works without you doing anything additional. Just provision your virtual machines. That's it, and it works. This is all because Google's VPC is global in nature. So that's the first thing. That's the second feature. And if you were very curious how this happened, the whole reason is whenever you create a project, by default, GCP creates a network for you automatically. The network name is called as default. And if you just go to that network, you will see it will have subnets in all the 20 regions. So that's the beauty. So tomorrow, if Google creates provisions a new region, then it will become 21. So these are the subnets which is created automatically. This is because of which, and plus the firewall rule which Google created when a network was created, like the ping ICMP. Because of this, without you doing anything additional, the ping started working. So that is the feature number 2. All right, let's move on to the next feature, feature number 3, which is again one of my favorite features, custom machine type. So let's assume you have there are various machine types available in every cloud. So GCP, AWS, Azure, they have a set of predefined machine types. Even in GCP, you have N1, N2 series, G1, F1 series, and there is now M1 series also coming into picture, the memory optimized machine types and the compute optimized machine types. But all are good. But if I have a workload which is running on my on-premise and I have done the sizing for that thoroughly, and this is a custom machine, this is a custom workload which specifically requires a compute option of 6 vCPU, 17 GB of RAM. Very weird, yes, but this is my workload. So this is how is my requirement. I have done everything. I have taken into consideration the operating system overhead, all those things I have taken into consideration, and I have arrived at this machine type. Now, can any cloud vendor provide this kind of a machine type? 6 vCPU, 17 GB of RAM. Let's explore that quickly. So I am in Amazon's AWS EC2 instances, and if you quickly see, they have, as I mentioned, various predefined machine types, A1, T3, T2, lots of them. And if you quickly see, the one which we wanted is 6 vCPU, 17 GB of RAM. And if you see here, you cannot get that easily. So either you have to over provision it or under provision it. So if you do all those things, the the impactful thing here is your workload will not be working as expected. So if you over provision it, you're going to pay more bill. Say for example, you say no, let's not under provision it, let's give the full thing. If you go with 16 vCPU and 32, almost like 10 vCPU will be idle, almost like 15 GB of RAM will be idle. So you're wasting resource and you're going to pay a huge bill. The same thing applies for your Azure virtual machines also, where they have few options here. So if I just go to one of them, maybe general purpose instances, you will see they have to an extent closer to what we expected. At least you can use this one or you can use this. If you use this, it's under provision. If you use 8 vCPU and 32 GB of RAM, it is over provision. But Google is very, very unique in this case. So let's try to do this part, the custom machine type. All right, let's do a demo on that custom machine type. So this is the name of my machine, 16 vCPU, 17 GB of RAM. Let's see whether we can provision that in Google. So if you see the standard machine types as something very similar in other cloud, you will not be able to serve the one. So either you have to go with under provisioning it or over provisioning it. But the beauty of Google is they give you this customized machine type. So if you just click on this general, you see this custom machine type. When you click on this, it gives you the option. There are certain rules. So the vCPU has to be either 1 or a even number. So 6 is an even number, definitely it's going to work. And the machine type, the memory has to be 0.25 GB incremental. For example, 17 will definitely work. 17.3 will not work, but 17.25 will definitely work. So a very weird machine type, that is something possible in Google. So let's try to go ahead and click create and provision this custom machine type. Alright, the custom machine type has been successfully provisioned, and nowhere in no other cloud you can see such a machine type. You can provision it. 16 vCPU, 17.25. So that's the uniqueness of Google. Let's now go to the next unique feature. So moving on to the next feature, which is feature number 4, which is VM live migration. So this is a beautiful feature. So say for example, if Google, they have data centers which is nothing but the zones. So if there's any maintenance activity which they need to do in those data centers, definitely the racks needs to be upgraded or some networking patches or something has to be done. So if they do this, this will definitely impact your virtual machine and your workload. So instead of they sending you a notice that we will have a downtime in so and so time period, what Google does is Google does this live migration, meaning you don't need to be informed itself. You don't need to be aware whether Google is doing some infrastructure maintenance. They live migrate your virtual machines without zero downtime. So that's the beautiful feature, I would say. And if you keep a watch closely on your stack driver monitoring, you will get some events like this. Say for example, where it shows there are few instances migrated during the maintenance time. So this is just for your information. That's it. You will not have any impact, no downtime for your virtual machine. That's one of the beautiful features. Let me show you where you can turn on this feature in the console. All right, we are in the console. Let's create a virtual machine, and the place where you can turn on this live migration is click on this management part, and under this management part you'll see this feature on host maintenance. Whenever there's any infrastructure stuff, migrate my VM. That's the option which is recommended by Google. So turn this on and this will migrate without you doing anything whenever there's any infrastructure upgrades from Google side. So this is your live migration feature. So let's move to the next feature, which is feature number 5. So in this feature, we'll explore Cloud Shell. So this is one of my best or the favorite product or service, I would say. I don't call it as a service, but this is part of GCP, Cloud Shell. So even in this modern age, there are few organizations who don't allow the employees to install any softwares on their corporate laptops because of their own restrictions. Nothing to blame there. But if you are a developer or if you are an architect, you want to do something faster, installing certain stuff, so you're raising a ticket, all those things could be a overhead. But Cloud Shell is a beautiful option where you can get all the stuffs pre-packaged in and you can just launch it using a browser. That's the beautiful feature, I would say. You don't need to install anything. So my preferred browser is Chrome browser, but you can use any modern browsers to launch your Cloud Shell. Once you launch your Cloud Shell, you can get almost like a free compute option, which is like G1 small, where you get zero point 0.6 vCPU, which is bustable, and 1.7 GB of RAM, which is totally free, and they give you 5 GB of persistent disk. What does this mean? Is if you create, this is nothing but a ephemeral virtual machine, because whatever you do in that, it's ephemeral, it cannot retain the state, but Google provides you 5 GB of persistent disk, so you can keep certain configurations or some scripts in that. So when you log off and log in again, the data would still be persisted there. And if this free compute is not enough for you, for example, if you are doing some Docker build, you are doing a containerization of a application, you want to run Docker build, and usually Docker utilities and are a little bit memory and CPU intensive. With this low memory, you cannot do it. Even if you try to do it, it will take longer time to create the container image. What Google provides you is, on top of free, they give you one more free option, like a boost mode, where for 24 hours your Cloud Shell can be boosted with N1 standard one, meaning the vCPU would be fully one vCPU, it's not a shared one, and 3.75 GB of RAM. This is valid for 24 hours. So this is like free on top of free. So with this Cloud Shell, you don't need to install any utilities which you commonly use in cloud. It could be like Docker, kubectl, connecting to MySQL, connecting to Postgres. You don't need to install anything. It comes inbuilt with it, and tools like curl, wget, all those things are there. And if you're a developer, almost most of the runtimes, it could be Java, Go, Python, PHP, .NET, Ruby, everything is pre-packaged in it. So the developer's life or the operation guys life becomes very easier. And recently they have added even Terraform, Helm. Easily it's pre-packaged in Cloud Shell itself. So this makes your job or life easier, and it's totally free. This is attached to your Gmail ID or to your email ID, to be very specific. If you are attached to a free tier account, even after your tier expires, you will have access to it. But if you don't use it after like 120 days, they will going to remove that disk. So that's the thing. So let's quickly see this in the demo. So this is where, for people who have never used Cloud Shell, this is the place where you can activate this. Click on it and it is going to open up your Cloud Shell. And other cloud vendors, for example, Azure also provides Cloud Shell. But the drawback there is the persistent disk is not free. You need to attach a persistent disk for your work to be done. So that is not free. And AWS does not even have this feature itself. So you can only install Cloud SDK on your laptop and do it. So that's the stuff. And the disk which I was mentioning, the persistent disk which I was mentioning, or the 5 GB, how can you get to know that? You can just type ls block and you'll come to know that the slash home partition, it comes up with 5 GB of disk. So this is the one. And if you want to see the machine type, so you can just type free minus m to get the machine type, the memory 1.75. And if you put ls CPU, you should see the CPU there, one CPU 0.56, usually it shows as 1, and the boost mode which I mentioned. So click on this three dots and you should be able to see this boost mode. So this will turn on your Cloud Shell into, for 24 hours, it will be in a more powerful option. So on top of free, they give you one more free option. So that is our Cloud Shell feature, which is totally free. So that's the beauty there. Moving on to the next feature, feature number 6. So this is towards storage. So we know in Google Cloud Storage we have various storage classes: regional, multi-regional, now dual regional is also possible, nearline and cold line. So these are the various storage classes available. The biggest advantage here is with these storage classes, they are used for different purposes, but irrespective of what is the purpose, the retrieval time, whether you are a multi-regional storage class or a cold line storage class, Google does not make any discrimination. You are able to retrieve that object in the same time range. So it remains that the time, the retrieval time almost remains the same, But if you look into other clouds like AWS, where they provide multi-regional storage classes, which is very much equivalent to your S3 bucket, and Coldline storage class is equivalent to your Glacier, the retrieval time varies. So storage like S3, the retrieval time would be faster, but Glacier would be slightly slower. But on the pricing side, if you see, do a quick comparison, Coldline is slightly higher, but still the price which you pay is really worthful, because say for example, what will you store in Coldline? It could be compliance data, or it could be some audit data which you have kept, which you would not be accessing it very frequently, maybe once in a year. But when you want it quickly. So if you want such a requirement, Google really rocks here, because they does not make any discrimination. Whether you are Coldline, whether you are Nearline, the object will be retrieved almost the same time if it was a regional one or a multi-regional bucket. So let's try to quickly do a demo on this. So I am in my Cloud Shell environment, and if you see, I don't have any buckets, so it's empty. There's no buckets. So this is a 28 MB image file, so bigger one. So I did not want to take a smaller image and show you a demo, a bigger one. So let me try to create four different storage classes. One is regional, multi-regional, regional, nearline, and coldline, and we'll try to expose that object. This is this 28 MB object, make it public, and try to use curl command to see the retrieval time. So that's what we are going to do. So let me run my script. So the first part is create those four uh, buckets. So I have created my multi-regional bucket in Asia. Then let me create my regional bucket in Mumbai. Similarly, let me create my nearline bucket again in Mumbai. Similarly, the cold line also in Mumbai. So I have written the script here so that I can easily make it work easily. Now what we will do now is we'll copy this file, which is that 60 or 58 MB of file, into all this four storage buckets. Once we copy it, what we will do is we'll expose that, change the ACLs to make it public, and once we make it public, we can try to access it. So we have almost made it, we have copying it. So once the copy is done, you see I'm changing the ACLs so that I can make it public. The reason making it public is, how can I see the retrieval time? So to just make it clear, so I just took that example, I have made it public, but in reality you will never expose audit data to be public. To just show you the time part, you see this. So I have retrieved the data from my regional bucket. The real time, so real clock time, is 4 seconds. Now if I do the same thing for my regional one, so let's see how long it takes. Let me hit. You see that it took 5 seconds, almost in an acceptable range. So let me try to do the same thing for my nearline one and see how much delay or the retrieval time, which is really good, 4 seconds, which is really good. And the last option which you wanted to see is your regional cold line one, and it also would be in the same range. So this is a very unique feature. It's, I would say, it's much better than this thing. So that's the beauty here. So it does not make any discrimination. If you are cold line, I'm going to retrieve you very slowly. It does not make that. So that's a very unique feature of GCP, specifically in Google Cloud Storage. So that's our retrieval time feature. Let's go back to the slides. So the next feature which we will discuss is feature number 7, the last feature, which is one of the most important feature, Anthos. So Anthos is your modern application management platform that provides a consistent development and operation experience between your GCP, AWS, Azure, and your on-premise environment. So this, I would say, the behind the scene, the components which are used extensively are Kubernetes, which is an open source product, open source from Google, Istio. So these are some of the important components. I would say if this becomes a success, this would be the standard for any cloud deployment, because it's like you write your application once and you can deploy it in anywhere. GCP, AWS, Azure, or on-premise. And you can, if you want to still manage certain workloads on-premise and still want to use some of your workloads in GCP, and you want to have one single uh, plane of control, you can use your GCP console. There are certain plugins or drivers which you need to install, not drivers, I would say something like a utility. Once you install that, you'll be able to do that. If you are really interested, it's not accessible for free trial. So it's, as I mentioned, it's not available freely. So if you come to your marketplace and search for Anthos, it will show you an option there where you can click on the first option, Anthos, and you can contact the Google sales. So based on that, based on the relationship with your organization, you may get a free trial. So use this option and you should be able to explore how you can deploy workloads on premise, on cloud, on GCP, AWS, or Azure. So those are the seven wonderful features in Google Cloud Platform. Hope you liked it. Thank you for watching.